Hello, good evening, welcome. This is Hot Edition. We're live from Anusabata Desawe Kanda, also live on Kesmi 107.1 in Tamale and beyond. We're live on W93.5 in Wa and beyond. This evening here on Hot Edition, High Courts dismiss NPP suit, paving a way for the Electoral Commission to proceed with the July 11 election rerun in 19 polling stations in Ablekuma North constituency. Stay with us. We've got details for you and a conversation on this here on Hot Edition on 3FM 92.7. Also, the Minister of Foreign Affairs, Samuel Okujato Ablakwa, refutes media reports claiming Ghana abstained from UN vote on LGBTQ activities. We've got details for you. And the new U.S. visa rules, most Ghanaians now limited to single entry and 3-month visas. Number of reactions pouring in after this news came public earlier today. Stay with us here on Hot Edition on 3FM 92.7. We're also on Kesmi 107.1 in Tamale and on W 93.5 in Wa and beyond. And in business later, IMF's caution against artificial stability of cedi vindicates according to the concerns about the fundamental state of the economy right now. We'll tell you what Professor Alfred Ocansey, who is a professor of finance at the University of Ghana Business School, thinks about all these. In the next 1 hour, I am Alfred Ocansey. Let's settle for a summary of the news now. And Christabel Success Trevor is here.
Thank you very much, Alfred. In our summaries, the Board of Directors of the National Cathedral has pushed back against media reports and public suggestions that the stalled religious project is to be repurposed into a national cultural convention center. In a strongly worded statement following an emergency meeting held on July 7, 2025, the board made it clear in a statement saying the cathedral is not abandoned, while acknowledging reports that government intends to reassign the site for use as a flagship venue under its new creative economy initiative, Show 24. The board clarified it had received no official communication from the state regarding any formal change in purpose. Also, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs has clarified that Ghana did not vote at the 59th session of Human Rights Council, HRC, to support LGBTQ plus rights in the country. A statement issued on Wednesday, July 9 by the ministry noted that the votes at the United Nations Human Rights Council was only about whether persons who identify as LGBTQI should be protected against violence and discrimination or not. The ministry said the vote which Ghana abstained from was not about support for LGBTQI rights, rather the renewal of the mandate of the independent expert on protection against violence and discrimination based on sexual orientation and gender identity. In other stories, the minority in parliament has accused the government of causing financial loss to the state by spending $1.2 million on a relaunch of the chip-embedded passports. They claim the policy was contracted and financed by the Akufo-Addo government, making the relaunch by the current government unnecessary. Addressing the media, the deputy ranking member on the Foreign Affairs and Regional Integration Committee, Nana Asafo-Adjei, says the relaunch diverted scarce resources from service delivery. Finally, the High Court has dismissed an application filed by Nanekwe Friye, the MPP parliamentary candidate for Ablekuma North, seeking to stop a planned rerun of parliamentary elections in 19 polling stations within the constituency. The rerun scheduled for July 11, 2025 is part of the Electoral Commission's efforts to conclude the disputed December 7, 2024 elections. Delivering the ruling, the judge described the application for an interim injunction as unmeritorious, stating that the balance of convenience lies in allowing the EC to fulfill its constitutional obligation. Over to you, Alfred.
Thank you. So there's more of this on 3news.com. Make some time and visit 3news.com. Now, this is Hot Edition. We're live on Kesmi 107.1 and on W93.5 in and beyond. Let's stay on the matter of what the ruling of the Accra High Court is today, earlier dismissing the New Patriotic Party's interim injunction application seeking to prevent the Electoral Commission from proceeding to rerun elections in 19 out of the 281 polling stations in the Ablekuma North constituency on July 11. Now, the presiding judge, Ali Babaturi, ruled that the balance of convenience favors the Electoral Commission constitutional duty to ensure representation for the people. Now, lawyers for the NPP parliamentary candidate Nana Akua-Afrie sought the court to grant a 10-day ex parte injunction against the Electoral Commission. They noted this would grant the party adequate time to serve the Electoral Commission with an application asking for an explanation regarding the failure to adhere to the High Court's earlier directive to collate and declare results of 3 outstanding polling stations. Lead counsel for the NPP candidate Nana Akua-Afrie, Gary Nemakon, argued that following the High Court's directive in January, the Electoral Commission acknowledged in multiple public communications, including a press release and briefing by the Deputy EC Chair, Dr. Bosman Asari, in Parliament, that only 3 polling stations remained uncollated and further requested for security to do so. Now, Gary Nemakon indicated that the Commission's actions contravened the court orders, stressing that all the polling stations' results or pink sheets had already been certified by party agents and pressing officers at the time of the election, making a rerun both unnecessary and unlawful. But presiding Judge Ali Babaturi, in his ruling, asserted that the Electoral Commission has the constitutional mandate to conduct elections for constituents. He added that the Electoral Commission also has the power to adequately compensate Nana Akua-Afrie in damages if she wins the application to quash the EC's decision to rerun the elections. With this decision by the High Court earlier today, the Electoral Commission is expected to carry out the rerun of the 19 polling stations in the Ablekuma North constituency on Friday, July 11. That's just some 48 hours away from now. I'll take a listen to Deputy General Secretary of the NDC, Mustafa Gbande, speaking to 3FM after the ruling earlier today.
That the action by the MPP are full of frivolity, vexatiousness. There's no way to restrain the Electoral Commission from giving fidelity to the law. You can't stop the Electoral Commission from giving fidelity to the law. You know, the only way that can happen is in a banana republic. And the MPP knew that the action they are commencing is not really seeking a remedy in court, but an action to cover up for the unfitness to participate in the election. While they are in court, they are in Ablekuma trying to test their popularity there. They are campaigning, except to say that they know that there's no way they will win that election. They know that their candidate is not a misfit and a mismatch. On public record, having done things wrong to disgrace the Republic of Ghana. They know that. And they know that the NDC's candidate is a strong candidate. But that constituency, the MPP have been there for some time. They've abused the goodwill, and we have won that seat. They tried to frustrate it, but the rule is that we have won. And Friday's election will just give manifestation of what the people contemplated on doing. You can't take that candidate by the MPP to Parliament. It will be a mockery. Complete mockery. Please, the MPP knows that in terms of organization, they are not well organized to participate in any election. Even their own meetings, when they go, they stab people knives. The last meeting they tried to hold after 20th December to the December election, it was Medros, blood was shed. They know they are disintegrated and they cannot participate in the election. They also know that the NDC is solid and intact. We are going into that election in one accord. They also know that for the sake of good governance, that the stability of this country is a testament of the NDC's goodness. There's no way Ghanaians will vote for them. So what people are Ghanaians.
Well, that's Mustafa Gbande is the Deputy General Secretary of the ruling NDC there. Let's stay a bit further on this matter here on Hot Edition on 3FM 92.7. We're also on Kesmi 107.1 in Tamale and on W 93.5 in Wa and beyond. And the man who has been testing the pulse of the constituency even before the December 7 elections, Musa Dankwa is the Executive Director of Global Info Analytics. He's joining us on the telephone right now. Mr. Dankwa, good evening. Thank you for joining us.
Good evening, and thank you for having me.
Now, prior to the December 7 elections in 2024, you had polled the Ablekuma North constituency. What was the outcome of that poll ahead of that election in December?
Right. Thank you very much for having me. In the last poll that was conducted in Ablekuma North, it was still a very close race, but the NDC candidate was leading by a very small margin. And then about 8% of people were saying that they were not going to vote, and about 2% said they were undecided. So even though it was very tight, the NDC candidate was leading before the election.
I see. But this is a constituency that the NPP has won since 1996, since the constituency was created, is it not?
Absolutely. And it tells you that if NDC was very competitive in that place or that constituency at the time, it means something magnetic or size of tsunami was coming. And it is for that reason that we saw what we saw on election day. And up to now, we haven't seen resolution until maybe Friday.
I see, but based on the details of your poll, what was then leading to the flip? Because if the NPP has won this constituency with wide margins since 1996, what influenced the decision by the people you polled, for instance, to now vote for the NDC, or the decision to vote for the NDC in December 7?
Everything was hinged on the economy, Alfred. The economy in 2024 was seen to be in dire straits, and people were not happy with what was going on. And for that matter, they wanted a new direction. And that meant that anything to do with MPP at the time really was becoming a toxic for many people. And Ablekuma North was no exception. Indeed, if you look at Greater Accra, the winning that the NDC got in Greater Accra was driven by MPP voters. MPP voters turned their back against their own party and went for NDC. And there was no way traditionally you would see NDC being competitive in Ablekuma North. They had to take MPP's vote to switch camp for this to happen. So they switch camp.
I see. So a lot more of the NPP supporters or persons who were voting for them in previous elections decided now to vote for the NDC.
Exactly. I mean, the polls were showing before the election that about 35% of people who voted for Nanado in 2024 intended to vote for NDC candidate in 2020. In 2020, intended to vote for NDC candidate in 2024. So the signs were there. Clearly, it was there.
I see, because if you look at the previous elections, for instance, in 2020 and then also in 2016, the NPP won the Ablekuma North with wide margins, over 1,500 and sometimes in over 2,000 difference of votes. But then yesterday, listening to the General Secretary of the party address the press, they are of the view that their candidate, Nana Friye, won the constituency with 414 vote difference.
It tells you the swing that the workplace there was unprecedented. I mean, to have led with nearly 30,000 in the previous election and now only 414, it shows something, dramatic has happened in the constituency. And this can only happen with the help of MPP voters.
I want to find out how this strikes you. I mean, the decision by the party to not contest in the rerun of the elections in the 19 polling stations on Friday.
I think the signs are clear that if they contest, they will lose. And initially, I think the court case would have given them a very good reason to boycott. Luckily, today, the court has ruled that no, the EC can go ahead. For that reason, I think their strongest argument against going for the ballot has been kind of neutralized. If they don't participate, it will be clear that it's because they know they were not going to win the election.
I see. And this is the point where I bring in Solomon Owusu, who is a leading member of the Movement for Change. They are not contesting this election, but he's a political analyst as well who has been commenting on this particular development in the Ablekuma North constituency for quite a while now. And all of this, the Electoral Commission says, Mr. Owusu, it's their own way of bringing finality to this deadlock in the Ablekuma North constituency, which has led to they not having representation in Parliament as we speak. Now, you've recommended that there should have been a rerun of the entire, polling stations in 281 of them in the constituency. Why is that?
Good evening, Alfred, and to your cherished listeners. I believe that the conduct of the Electoral Commission and the parties involved in this election and necessitated a total rerun of the entire constituency. We are now finding full pink sheets. All the sides are claiming that they can't find their pink sheet. The issue that is the referee who's supposed to have a pink sheet that is key says he doesn't have his pink sheet. So how can we validate anything that they are turning out? So I was of the opinion that in order to restore any confidence in the electoral process, we go back and do a rerun. After all, each side is claiming victory. So if you are sure of yourself and we are going to deal with the same voter register, with the same people, with the exception of few who might have relocated within this short period or died, then we can go back and do a rerun to determine who actually won the election on the 7th of December. That was why I called for a rerun.
I see. But then the Electoral Commission's decision to rerun the 19 polling stations elections was predicated on the fact that the officers manning those 19 polling stations could not verify the carbon copy or the scanned copies of the pink sheets that the NPP provided. Because as you indicated, because of the violence that occurred during the coalition process in that constituency, in the specific polling stations as mentioned, the Electoral Commission doesn't even have a copy of the results. The NDC doesn't have a copy. It is the MPP that provided the scanned copies which the NDC contested. And then also these presiding officers could not authenticate or validate the results in there. What could the Electoral Commission have done differently?
That's what I'm saying, that I do not disagree with the decision of the EC as well as the court. But, Alfred, one thing that all of us must for is the prosecution of the returning officer for Ablekuma North. I mean, nobody can convince me that all of a sudden tax decided to target the returning officer, took away the pink sheet and got them bent without the returning officer reporting the matter to the police. The EC has not given us any indication that it has reported the matter. What it means is that though rerun is very necessary, we must make sure that the EC officials who allowed their pink sheet to be destroyed, allegedly, because I don't have any evidence that it was destroyed, to face the full rigors of the law. Why is it that the Electoral Commission under the CIP 127 is mandated to paste all the pink sheets at the various polling stations? Yet when you go to these 19 polling stations, you can't even find a single pink sheet to validate your victory. There will be none. And so calls for a rerun to that extent. We cannot be setting this bad precedent. Yes, the rerun is good, but people that allowed us to get to this situation must be brought to book.
And in this case, that's the Electoral Commission or the perpetrators of the violence, essentially.
No, first of all, the Electoral Commission is for no reporting the matter. We cannot take their position serious. So the returning officer has to be brought to book. He has to be prosecuted.
I see. Right, and this is what I bring in. Dr. Jonathan Asantiochi is a lecturer, the senior lecturer at the University of Cape Coast. He's a political analyst as well. Doc, can you hear us? Good evening. Thank you for joining us on Zoom.
Good evening, Alfred.
Great. Now,
is that Solomon on the
yes, that's Solomon. That's Solomon you've been listening to. He's of the view.
My regards.
Perfect.
My regards.
Thank you. He's.
I'm greeting you. It's been a while.
Yeah, we could do this after. Now, just quickly, he is of the view, that Solomon is of the view that before even talking about the rerun, we should have also seen some culpability and accountability, as it were, on the part of the Electoral Commission and also the perpetrators of the said violence that has led to this decision to rerun the polling station, the elections in the 19 polling stations. How does that strike you?
Well, ideally that should have been the case. But as it stands now, we have a job at hand. And that job is to ensure that Ablekuma North, have a representative in parliament that will be doing things in the name and on behalf of the people of Ablekuma North. That is more important than prosecution for now. That being said, you see, over the years, some of us have been very consistent with the current crop of the Electoral Commission. I have been very consistent. And so I wrote yesterday that, in fact, as far as the EC is concerned, the MPP is being served with a portion of the poison that they helped to create. They are being served with a portion of the poison that they helped to create. Look, this delayed coalition was a grand scheme. It is a symptom, of a grand orchestrated scheme. Nobody can argue with me otherwise. Because the way and manner it happened, it was virtually happening in so many other places, so many other constituencies, and that couldn't have been just a fluke. It was something that was planned. But as to whether the top commissioners are part or not, well, only one. I have called on the president to institute an inquiry, a committee of inquiry, so that they can do a thorough forensic audit of the activities of the Electoral Commission, spanning from a certain period up to the 2024 elections. And so as for culpability, it is there. Because before they were allowed to go and do A, B, C, and D jobs, they were given the rules and regulations. The LI 126, they were, taken through that particular process. And so if something has happened and it appears to be deliberate, then obviously there is the need for culpability. No two ways about that. But we need to go forward. And how do we go forward? We need a proper declaration of the mandate of the people. And that is what exactly ought to be done. I think that must be the focus. And so we can think of what others are saying and whether others are ready or not ready. I think that the most important thing is that the people of Ablekuma North, unlike SAR, they need to have representation. And that for me is the main key.
I see. But then again, now we're getting to know what the NPP has decided to do. They're not taking part in this election. And now today, we're hearing as well that the court has dismissed, the High Court dismissing the application filed by Nana Ekuafrie, the candidate for the NPP in the Ablekuma North in the 2024 December elections, seeking to stop the planned rerun of parliamentary elections in these 19 polling stations. So the way is clear now for the Electoral Commission, at least from what we are saying now, but the NPP is not going to take part in this election. Dr. Santioche.
Well, it's quite unfortunate. In this case, we've not seen people pulling guns here and there like Iowa, sort of as it happened, and people getting maimed here and there. This is a smooth process. I listened to the General Secretary with respect to the presser that they did. And when it got to this 19 polling stations, of which they were displaying, on the screen, the only thing he did was to go through just two of the outstanding 19 and said that, their candidate won in these two, so why would they want to go for a rerun? But the 17, he did not speak about that. You see, the picking and the choosing is not really good for a democracy and doesn't even augur well in terms of transparency. It is unfortunate that they will say a constituency that they have been winning for so many years, suddenly they are afraid to go for a rerun. I believe that if they had sincerely won, they would have insisted. It doesn't matter. If these people are ardently MPP people, nothing can change their heart or their mind. They will still go ahead to do so. But if you listen to the Global Info Analytics data that came before the elections, it was a very close call. And so if you look at the suggestions of the time, then it means that the advantage will be, the momentum will be on the side of the NDC more than the NPP. So why would they want to go and lose? I think that it is out of bad faith. It is not based on any kind of principle. With respect to the court giving a verdict that they should do collation, you see, the court did not say where the collation, should take place or continue. And so if a situation has arisen and they're saying go and continue the collation, and there are other issues that ought to be discussed, straightened, then that should be the bone of contention. So once those issues have been streamlined, then you can continue with the collation. But here is the case, it doesn't appear that they will have the wherewithal to continue with the collation. But you are saying it is only level 3. So at the end of the day, if you have listened to the NDC representative, I've listened to the NPP, and I think that if the NDC proposed about 50-something, you are also proposing 30-something. And then there is a middle line, according to the EC, should be 19. I think that it is now a win-win situation for both parties. And that, for me, is something that they should be able to look in the name of democracy to take part in the process. I mean, leaving it like that in itself is a betrayal of your own people. And now suddenly you are opposed to the EC that some of us criticize. You are now testing the incompetency of the EC. And suddenly you are siding with the chairman of the NDC that, well, if these people are booted out, you don't really mind. That is, for me, an unprincipled position and a betrayal of the EC, if you ask me. Because you consistently supported the EC, even in the face of bare incompetency. And yet, you see, that's why sometimes it worries me that Nivans Dimako, for example, could not in any way, as a director of elections for the NPP, see all the errors that the NDC saw, the IT, gurus and all the deputy, director of elections saw. You never saw any of such things. So what were you doing? You see, they are all incompetent. The director of elections for the
NDC, they are not here to they are not here to respond directly to you. But I want to thank you so much for your thoughts. Dr. Jonathan Asantioche is a political analyst, senior lecturer at the University of Cape Coast. Also to you, Ms. Solomon. Also, thank you so much for joining us with your thoughts on this matter.
Thank you,
fantastic. Also joining us as well, Musa Dankwa, thank you so much for joining us here as the Executive Director of Global Info Analytics. Also doing that prediction is indicated that based on the polls, there's a strong doubt about the NPP's chances, and then also predicting a likely loss for the NPP based on the outcome of the latest poll ahead of the Friday, July 19 polling stations rerun. There's more stories we're going to get into here on Hot Edition. Chrisabel?
Yes, because the Minister of Foreign Affairs, Samuel Okudzeto-Ablakwa, has refuted media reports claiming that Ghana abstained from a vote on LGBTQ plus rights. The reports have sparked sharp criticism against the government, particularly from opposition figures. At a news conference, Patrick Yalboama, Member of Parliament for Okaikwe Central, expressed surprise at Ghana's alleged decision and announced his intention to file a parliamentary question demanding an explanation from the Foreign Affairs Minister. Take a listen.
Foreign Affairs has observed that there are misleading reports in sections of the media that Ghana has abstained from a vote on LGBTQ plus. The ministry wishes to state for the record that there was no vote on support for LGBTQI++, for which Ghana abstained. So let's get it clear. There was no vote on support for LGBTQI++, for which Ghana abstained. Our ambassador in Geneva has clarified, they have sent us the full report, and they have clarified that the vote was about an independent expert's mandate on violence against women, against people of various sexual orientations. That is what the vote was about, a general vote about protecting human rights, particularly of women, violence against women and persons of various sexual orientation. And Ghana decided to abstain, consistent with our human rights credentials. Why will you want to endorse violence against women in particular? We frown against that. There is no way we will violate the human rights. And we have made it very clear that President Mahama, this government, and indeed the Ghanaian society, the larger Ghanaian society, is vehemently opposed to LGBTQI. So there is no way our envoys in Geneva will vote to support LGBTQI. The vote was about the independent experts' mandate in terms of violence against women and violence against people of various sexual orientation. And we do know that as a country, in as much as we are opposed to LGBTQI, we are against any forms of violence against them. We respect everybody's human rights. So even in the private members' bill that we all supported in Parliament, in the last Parliament, the 8th Parliament, it was clear that we show empathy to anybody we identify in Ghana to be practicing LGBTQI. In that private members' bill, nobody had the right to assault or attack or harm or maim or kill anybody identified in Ghana to be practicing LGBTQI. That will have meant that proposed legislation is inconsistent with our constitution, because our constitution, as you do know, has very entrenched human rights provisions which protects and guarantees the rights and freedoms of everybody. So misleading reports of that nature should be discarded, and I would urge the media to independently obtain what the vote was about at yesterday's Human Rights Council meeting. There was no vote on support for LGBTQI, no vote. The ministry is issuing a statement, and we shall be quoting copiously, very clear terms, the exact question as was put at the meeting, so that you can also independently verify. And it is clear that there was no vote on support for LGBTQI, whether you are for LGBTQI or you are against. If that was the vote, you can be assured that Ghana will have voted clearly against, because that is our position. We do not support that practice, and President Mahama has made it very clear that it will not be on his watch that he will support, or his government will endorse LGBTQI. He's made that very clear, and all of us, our religious leaders, our community leaders, our chiefs, everybody is clear about where Ghana stands on the matter of LGBTQI. So we thought that we use this opportunity, particularly as you are going to be representing us at UNESCO. So I have no doubt that President Mahama has made an excellent choice, and that you are going to champion African values, Ghanaian values, and really what should be God's given definition.
You just heard the Minister for Foreign Affairs, Samuel Okudzeto-Ablakwa, dismissing these reports. Now let's take a listen to Patrick Yao Boama, who's a member of Parliament for Okaikwe Central.
We were promised as a country by the government of the day that they were not going to support that activity. So we expected that Ghana should have taken a firm position on that. And I was a bit surprised to have seen that Ghana abstained. So we'll be asking the Minister of Foreign Affairs and representatives of government as to why Ghana abstained. I intend filing a question to understand the basis of their abstinence. Thank you.
Patrick Yao Buama there. The Mahama administration has abolished the One District, One Factory initiative that was introduced by the previous Akufo-Addo administration. The 1D, 1F policy was aimed at creating jobs for Ghanaians by establishing factories and industries to drive the country's industrialization agenda. It was first introduced in 2016 as part of the MPP's manifesto and subsequently launched as one of the MPP's flagship program. It was to change the nature of Ghana's economy from one which is dependent on imports and export of raw material to one which is focused on manufacturing value addition and export of processed goods. While previous attempts at rural economic revitalization in Ghana had focused mainly on the provision of physical infrastructural facilities, the 1D, 1F program focused on the promotion of commercially viable business development initiatives to generate sustainable and accelerated economic development in peri-urban and rural communities. Let's take a listen to the Minister for Trade, Agribusiness and Industry, Elizabeth Ofosu-Adjare, announcing this in Parliament.
Mr. Speaker, I want to draw my colleagues' kind attention to the fact that as of now, there is no policy as 1D, 1F. I thank you. But in the absence of 1D, 1F, the ministry is into agro-processing parks. And so if you listen to the 24-hour economy launch, the 24-hour economy is the new thing on the block, the game changer, that which seeks to make Ghana very vibrant, irrespective of the minutes of the hour, the time of the day. And we are doing agro parks. And these agro parks, which seeks to be a great game changer, especially in the agro-processing zones, are being worked on to ensure that we are able to produce more around the clock for import substitution and for export, for foreign exchange earning, and more importantly, to create jobs for our team youth. I thank you very much.
Let's say a bit further on this matter here on Hot Edition on 3FM 92.7. As you just heard the Minister for Trade, Agribusiness and Industry, Elizabeth Ofosu-Adjare there. Now, Nicholas Isaka Bana is a development economist and a chartered accountant, is joining us on the telephone. Appreciate your time spent with us here on Hot Edition. What are your, first of all, your thoughts on the decision by this administration to discontinue the implementation of the One District, One Factory initiative started by the previous administration?
Well, thank you, Alfred, and good evening to your listeners. To start with, I'm not surprised because when the Minister of Finance presented a budget in March, he did make the same point that 1D, 1F had been abolished. But I think a better policy option would have been to say that the government has reset it, restructured it, or reorganized it, whichever term you choose, and incorporated it into the 24-hour economy initiative. And I say this for two reasons. Just 2 months ago or so, the same Minister of Trade and Industry put out an advert for people to bid to manage 1D, 1F enable youth factories, which had been built under the Ministry of Trade and Industries program called the Rural Enterprises Program, a program funded by the African Development Bank. I do not think they have suspended that procurement process. So if you say you've cancelled it, then what happens to those factories which have been built, for which you have put out a public tender for people to build, to manage them? So I'm a bit at a loss. Like I said, I think that a better option is to say that they have reorganized or restructured it and incorporated it into 24 economy, because the factories are there anyway. So that's my initial thought on it.
So essentially, we see a policy shift. If you look at the details of the 24 economy policy, then I'm sure you might have seen the highlights of it as well. You might be right in saying that it is not essentially a cancellation, because we see a huge part of the 24-hour policy economy hinging on industrialization. So to the extent that there is some leverage that can also be capitalized on with the foundation at its word that has been laid by this 24-hour, that is the 1D1F policy or initiative by the previous administration, you would rather recommend a review and also some possible redirection of the policy implementation instead of a total cancellation of the policy in itself, correct?
Yes, correct. I don't think even practically they can cancel the policy. I mean, maybe it's more of renaming it because, like I said, and let's get this clear. You have gone to the likes of the African Development Bank for money. I mean, the previous government under the Rural Enterprise Program, which is ongoing. So if you say you have cancelled it, that doesn't mean you've cancelled that program with the African Development Bank. So far, I haven't heard any statement to that effect. But Alfred, the point is this. If you take 1D1F, the original policy, they had 6 sectors. They had agro-processing, they had textiles and garments, pharmaceuticals, components manufacturing, paper products packaging. If you look at 24-hour economy, they make 24 program which deals with manufacturing. Agro-processing features strongly. Textiles and garments is there. Pharmaceuticals is there. Put that aside. If you look at the incentives under 1D1F, there were 3 core incentives. 1 was tax exemptions. 2 was concessionary financing from Ghana Exim. 3 was the interest rate subsidy. Yes, the tax exemptions, if you recall, sometime last year, there was a big issue about tax exemptions amounting to almost $335 million that the previous government sent to government for 42 companies, which, of course, the minority then rightfully opposed. And indeed, 3 members of the minority went to court over those tax exemptions. Of course, it didn't come to pass. New government came in. Under 24-hour economy, you also have tax exemptions. You have import duty exemptions. So the fundamental issue is that fundamental incentives-wise, you don't really have a big difference. The critical point is how the implementation has been done. Because the controversy over the tax exemptions of 42 companies was that on what basis are you giving it? How transparent is it? Are those companies deserving of it? Those are the key lessons we need to address and ensure that we don't repeat those same issues in 24-hour economy. If you come to the incentive number 2, concessionary financing from Ghana Exim Bank, today we are now hearing that Ghana Exim Bank went to people who are politically affiliated, which have now become the subject of Yoko investigation. Once again, under 24-hour economy, you also have concessionary financing. How do we ensure that those same issues that happened under the previous government do not recur? I think is a more fundamental issue that has to be addressed, rather than we have cancelled it or whatever.
It's it's a conversation that we'll see playing out in many ways. So appreciate you with your thoughts on this matter, especially because this 24-hour economy policy is going to be a topical part of our conversation in the coming days, and how this also integrates policies by the previous administration, like planting for food and jobs, and then one district factory, as we're talking about now. So please, appreciate your time on this matter. Thank you so much for joining us here.
Thank you, Alfred.
Now, Nicholas Isaka Bana is a development economist and chartered accountant, joining us with his thoughts on this. Let's go on to some more stories, shall we?
Yes, private legal practitioner Kwame Ekufu has waded into the conversation regarding the process to investigate the suspended Chief Justice over claims of misconduct. This comes as Madam Gertrude Tokonu heads to the ECOWAS court over claims of abuse of her human rights. That action followed a press conference she held earlier in which she made a number of allegations against the government on the process against her. In an exclusive interview with Beatrice Adu, lawyer Kwame Ekufu said that instead of the press conference, the suspended CJ should have followed the legal process of going to the High Court with her complaints.
The comparatives are not necessarily an ingredient for impeachment. Those comparatives are not necessarily an ingredient for impeachment. We go to court on every occasion and we get rulings against us. I disagree with the Chief Justice in respect of a ruling when they gave there was an ex parte application, and the application was granted to run till the end of the case. I disagreed with her. But those are not ingredients for impeachment, because judges have the power to go right and have the power to go wrong. We go to court sometimes, we put forward very good cases, we lose. You may complain in the comfort of your office, but that does not necessarily become an ingredient for an impeachment process. On the parliamentary one, with respect to the speaker that being said,
yes,
the Chief Justice took a position in court, which I disagree with, especially in respect to the application for injunction. I disagree that it was said ex parte. I thought there was substantial time for people to have been put on notice. I thought that it was unnecessary for the court to be engaged in an existing confrontation with Parliament, especially as we approached an election period. It gave us very, very tense situation to the environment, the political environment at that time. But that is not to say that these are ingredients for impeachment.
So you agree that it was an interference?
I wouldn't say it was an interference. It was a constitutional interpretation which did not favor the parliamentary branch of government. I wouldn't call it an interference. Otherwise, persons who do not disagree with the decision to form an attorney general or J.H. Mensah will call it an interference. Ever since
private legal practitioner Kwame Akufu. Italian energy giant Eni will temporarily shut down its gas plant on Sunday, July 13, for essential repair works aimed at boosting gas production to approximately 270 million standard cubic feet per day. The Minister for Energy and Green Transition, John Jinapo, confirmed the scheduled maintenance, acknowledging that the shutdown may result in temporary power outages. He, however, urged the public to remain patient, emphasizing that the upgrade is necessary to enhance long-term energy reliability for Ghanaians. Here's the spokesperson for the Energy Ministry, Richmond Roxon, speaking on Midday Live.
I'm saying that yesterday the information put out by the Minister of Energy and Green Transition was that there's an upgrade by Eni, which will give us more gas. What it is that currently Eni produces about 240 million standard cubic feet. We're expecting 30 million standard cubic feet more, which will take the entire gas supply to 270 million scarf. This will be done on Sunday. That's what the schedule is. And we're expecting that right after we'll have enough gas supply to improve on our power production. We're expecting it to be 4 to 6 hours. Within that period, you're going to have temporary or little to no disruptions at all. The minister, together with the stakeholders, have put together a plan, and we don't expect any significant interruptions of power supply at a time. No, hours, not days. We expect the work to be completed that same day.
The spokesperson for the Energy Ministry, Richmond Roxon, will be back with the latest in business and sports. Bismarck Ewusa is back with the business news.
Auspiciousness and causes of success. May you have the confidence to always do your best. May you take
Don't let money stop you. With just your Ghana card, you can get a loan to turn your ideas into reality. Already running a business? Need more capital? Or are you a salary worker looking for extra funds? Bills offers fast and easy loans with no collateral, no deposit, and no SUSI savings required. Wherever you are, whatever you need, Bills makes it happen. Call Bills Microcredit today. Call 0596 920 833 or 0302 200 390 and get started. Bills is licensed and regulated by the Bank of Ghana. Bills, financing your needs. Terms and conditions apply.
Hello, good evening, and welcome to the business segment on Hot Edition on 3FM 92.7 with me, Bismarck Ausa. Coming up tonight, cost of Bank of Ghana's 2024 official travels hits 206 million cedis, despite posting 9.4 billion cedis loss, raising eyebrows over public spending controls. We'll bring you details. Thanks for your company. Now to the details. The Bank of Ghana spent 206 million cedis on official travel in 2024, double the previous year's amount. This is despite ongoing efforts to tighten public spending as part of Ghana's IMF-supported economic recovery program. The following 3 Business News Desk report has details. The Bank of Ghana has come under public scrutiny following its 2024 annual report, which shows that the central bank spent 206 million cedis on official travel last year. This figure is exactly twice the 103 million cedis spent in 2023 and represents the highest travel-related expenditure by the bank since 2015. The disclosure comes at a time of increased calls for fiscal discipline, especially as the central bank posted a 9.4 billion cedis loss for the year, an improvement from 2023's 13.2 billion cedis loss, but still significant. Though the central bank did not provide a detailed breakdown, analysts say Ghana's involvement in the IMF program, including travel to Washington and other international engagements, may have contributed to the sharp rise. Travel spending by the Bank of Ghana was as low as 20 million cedis in 2020 due to COVID-19 restrictions. It surged from 76 million cedis in 2022 to this record high, 206 million cedis in 2024. Meanwhile, a presidential directive issued in February 2025 bans first-class travel for government officials, a move expected to moderate such costs going forward. And that was a 3 Business News Desk report on the cost of Bank of Ghana's 2024 travels hitting 206 million cedis, double the previous year's amount. Moving on, government has appointed former Managing Director of CalBank, Frank Edu Jr., as the chairman of a newly constituted 9-member board of directors of National Investment Bank, NIB. In a statement on his Facebook page, Finance Minister Dr. Kasiela Tuforsen said, under this new leadership, NIB will operate with the independence and professionalism it deserves. The minister also announced that government has made a bold decision to recapitalize NIB. According to him, a fuller detail of the comprehensive recapitalization plan of the bank will be unveiled during the upcoming mid-year review. Now, the Institute of Economic and Research Policy Promotion, IERPP, says recent concerns raised by the International Monetary Fund, IMF, over Ghana's handling of the foreign exchange market confirm long-standing warnings it issued about government's interference in the cedi's value. The think tank believes the IMF's latest review has vindicated its earlier caution that the central bank's frequent dollar injections were unsustainable and harmful to long-term economic stability. There is more in the following News Desk report. A local economic think tank is raising fresh concern following the International Monetary Fund's warning to government over how it's managing the cedi. The Institute of Economic and Research Policy Promotion, IERPP, says the IMF's caution aligns with earlier advice it gave, urging government to move away from aggressive dollar injections that interfere with natural exchange rate movements. In its 4th program review, the IMF advised the Bank of Ghana to scale back its interventions and adopt a formal foreign exchange policy that allows for greater market flexibility. The IERPP, in a statement signed by Executive Director Professor Isaac Boidi, noted that short-term efforts to stabilize the cedi may ease pressure temporarily, but risk creating deeper imbalances in the economy, encouraging cheap imports and discouraging local production. The group says the absence of a clear and transparent FX intervention framework has created uncertainty and speculation in the market and is urging government to reconsider its approach before long-term damage is done. And that was a 3 Business News Desk report, bringing us to the end of the business news on Hot Edition with me, Bismarck Ausa. For more business stories, please check out our website 3news.com. Thanks for your company.
This is the 3FM Baby Fair happening live on the 11th to the 13th of July at Marina Mall Airport City in Accra from 10 a.m. and it's absolutely free. From baby essentials and kids wear to toys, skincare, educational material and so much more.